Hello. Welcome to the start of my new science world. Today I will do all of the basics from exploring space over kerbin to visiting the North Pole. Like all worlds, I'll start off on the world creation screen. I'll keep all the difficulty settings the same, and I'll call the world Jebediah Aerospace, after the daring pilot who will probably end up exploding. Also, if I can find it, there's a Jeb's flag. Now without further ado, let's create our new playground. Welcome to the Space Centre for Jebediah Aerospace. Thank you, Gene Kerman, for telling me how to go around the facilities. It's greatly appreciated. Now, here is the most important building: research and development. Using this, I can get plenty of parts to mess about with and hopefully use to progress to the Moon and Mimas. The only way to beat this game is to get every part from in here, which, because I have Breaking Ground and Making History DLCs, it might take a little longer to complete this tech tree. Now, to progress through all these nodes, I need to get science points, and the only way for me to get my first science points is to launch my first craft. Now, to start off this flight, we have to do some science from the launch pad. I did an EVA report, looked at the mystery goo, and did a crew report. After that little gather of science, we just have to throttle the engine up, and then hit go. And away we go. This footage is being played at 5 times speed, so if you're wondering why we're going so fast, that's why. Okay, so in a sec the main engine will cut off, and now we can do the same science that we did on the pad, but in the sky. After doing that quick science grab, I was pretty stressed out, as I was pointing down and gaining speed quite rapidly. Luckily, I was going slow enough for the parachute to half deploy, and then fully deploy at the last second, slowing us down just above Kerbin's oceans for a landing. Welcome back to Kerbin, Jebediah Kerman. Sadly, your mission isn't over yet, as you have to get the final bits of science from the ocean. Now, we can finally bring Jebediah Kerman back home. Okay, from that flight, I managed to get 37.2 science points. Wait, why are the decimal places in science points? Anyway, with these I can buy some much needed parts from research and development. So, I got the first 2 nodes, Basic Rocketry and Engineering 101, like most people, and then I got Survivability, not because of safety for poor Jebediah, but because I had some more science in there. Sadly, that was all I could afford, so I went to the VAB to launch my next rocket. Hello, and welcome to the launch of the rocket named Suborbital Craft. We'll launch to space low above Kerbin with our mystery goo, thermometer, and press max barometer. Then, hopefully, we'll land in the desert biome for extra science. With that, let's launch the vehicle. And away we go. I started turning right just then, but then remembered the desert was left, so started going left. It was a pretty normal gravity turn, but the thrust to weight ratio was very high. I started to throttle down because I realised that I was slowly becoming a bullet with a TWR of 4. Once I reached space, I did my science. You might have noticed that I have Bob and not Jeb, but that's because Bob is the only person who can reset experiments. Anyway, once I was close to my apoapsis, I fired my engine once more to go on a course to the desert. I then did a very kerbal misclick that jeopardised the whole mission. I clicked transmit data instead of extend antenna. What's it doing now? No, stop, no. What have I done? Oh my gosh. What did I even click? Not enough electric. What have I done? I've killed the probe. Accidentally clicking transmit data had used up all my electric charge transmitting. This wouldn't be so bad late game with all the solar panels and big batteries, but right now with no solar panels or batteries, it was a lethal mistake. I then realised the severity of the situation, as because I had no electric charge or pilot, I couldn't point the heat shield retrograde. I decoupled from the lower stage, getting ready for Bob to explode, when the top stage miraculously started slowly spinning. I waited for it to point retrograde, and when it did, I turned on time warp for it to stop spinning, and it worked. Then, just to add more stress, when the vessel hit the atmosphere, it started wobbling. Luckily, I managed to go through the atmosphere intact, but managed to completely miss the desert. After waiting a little while, I deployed the parachute and slowly glided down to the ocean. Then did science and brought Bob safely back home. From that almost fatal mission, I managed to get 74.2 science points, which isn't half bad. So, same drill, time to go to research and development. The first thing I got was the basic science node, because it had the game-changing Science Junior. This beauty can get us over 40 science in a low kerbin orbit alone. Then I got general rocketry because I just wanted a bigger rocket. Finally, I got stability because of the decouplers. Now, it's time to get ready for our third flight. For this next flight, I'm going to get my rocket to 250,000 meters for science from high kerbin orbit, and also I'm going to try to get to the Arctic. Like usual, let's use Bob to get some science from the launch pad. Then, throttle up and go to space. And away we go. This rocket went ridiculously fast. This bit is on normal speed just for a comparison, but this bit now is on 5 times speed. So, for this first bit of the flight, I'm mostly just going up and not focusing on the gravity turn. I then remembered that I was trying to get to the Arctic, so started going a bit more horizontally. I continued to head along the 60-degree mark until the apoapsis was just over 250 kilometers. I then decoupled and fired the engines a little bit longer to make sure that I was in a high orbit for a bit of time, and then coasted up to 250 kilometers. I did the Science Junior's material study in low orbit. I then made sure to extend the antenna and not transmit all of my data. After a few minutes longer, I did all the other experiments in a high kerbin orbit. Once I'd done that, I turned on my engine once more and didn't have enough fuel to reach the Arctic. In defeat, I pointed retrograde and got ready to enter the atmosphere. Little did I know, this re-entry will be far worse than last time. The flames started building as I hit the atmosphere at 2 kilometers per second. Then, a massive fireball wiped out half the vehicle. Whilst editing, I went frame by frame, and it appears that the Science Junior exploded and caused a chain reaction of scientific equipment exploding. I paused the game, wondering if this was the true end for poor Bob. I unpaused and decided to spin, and for some reason, it worked. After a short free fall, I deployed the parachute and glided Bob into Kerbin's grasslands. I then did what little science I could, and brought Bob back home. From that mission, we managed to get 59.6 science, which is quite good for an almost failure. I went to research and development and realised that I couldn't afford much with my science. I decided to get the advanced rocketry node so I could make an even bigger rocket than before. After that, I had almost no science left, so I went to the spaceplane hangar for a very different type of craft. This weird little vehicle has been made to roll around the space centre to get science from all the buildings. I started by doing a quick roll test. Then, I did science from the runway. After that, I recovered the vessel. From this very short mission alone, I got 29.4 science, which in my opinion wasn't enough to unlock the other nodes. So, I went to the runway and tried the craft again. This time, I decided to roll this craft to the spaceplane hangar. Then, I discovered a problem. Yeah, it kind of snaps in half after it goes too fast. I reverted the flight and tried to go to the astronaut complex instead, whilst making sure it didn't go too fast. That's when I discovered another issue. It's really hard to turn as it goes from left going left and left going right every other second as it's rolling. Then it exploded again. I thought to myself, well, third time's the charm, but no, whoever said that obviously lied. So I gave up on the centre roller and made a rocket instead to fly onto a building, deploy a parachute and do science. This is what I came up with. It has a Science Junior, a cargo bay with experiments, and a ton of fuel. I launched the rocket and it went up pretty fast, so I started to turn almost instantly towards the VAB. Once I got closer, I deployed the parachute to hopefully glide onto the roof. I noticed that it was a little off from the roof, so I turned using my engines, which with a deployed parachute that would spin my craft every time I used the engine, it was a nightmare. I slowly went down and managed to land on the edge of a roof, just off the main building. And obviously, the vessel fell off the roof, snapped in half and killed Jeb. I reverted back to launch, went up and deployed the parachute a little bit early. Then I fully realised how hard it was to steer with the parachute and just ended up doing loop-de-loops. Eventually, I managed to control it and do the smoothest landing ever. Yeah! Oh no. Whew! I then did my science and recovered the vessel. From that little building hop, I got 21.2 science. It still wasn't enough for the node I wanted, so I launched from the runway, deployed my parachute, struggled with the engine, and landed next to the spaceplane hangar, only to do more science, then recover the craft. After that extra 29.5 science was gotten, I had enough science to get the node I wanted. I wanted the electrics node, as with batteries and solar panels, I couldn't ever kill my probe again. Then, I got ready for my final flight. I said on my last proper flight that I would bring Bob to the Arctic. After a few technical issues, I couldn't, so this flight would be the one to bring him to the North Pole. Throttle up the engine, hit space, and we're off. This rocket, like the last one, went way too fast. I kept a pretty steep angle of attack because when I tested this rocket, it fell over if it went too flat. When the boosters ran out of fuel, I kept them on as they provided stability to the craft in the fireball of the atmosphere. Once I was out of the worst of the atmosphere, I pointed the nose down and waited for the first stage to run out of fuel. When it did, I decoupled the boosters and then the bottom stage. I then made a manoeuvre at my apoapsis to be 100% sure that I'd make it to the Arctic, and it said that I could make it with plenty of fuel remaining. I made sure that my solar panels were working, then I coasted up to the manoeuvre. I turned on the engine once more to boost my craft over the Arctic. I could have gone into an orbit, but it wouldn't have given me any sign, so there was no point. I turned the engine off and let Bob see the Arctic rising slowly over the horizon. Once I was close to the atmosphere, I turned on the engine to slow down a bit, as I had bad memories of re-entry at high speed. After I ran out of fuel, I decoupled the fuel tank in preparation to the fall back down to kerbin. The flames started licking the side of the craft as I fell back down to the planet at more than a kilometre per second. As my heart started racing, the flames started retreating. I realised that this was the most hectic-free re-entry of this series. I deployed the parachute over some Arctic hills, then extended it a bit early to make sure that I wouldn't crash into them. After that, I landed and did my last bits of science. I then stowed Bob back into his capsule and recovered his capsule that was for once in one piece. From that impressive mission that would put Jebediah Aerospace at the front of kerbin space programs, I only got 35.1 science. I went to R&D and saw that I was 2 science off the next node. So, on that terrible disappointment, we shall end. Please like and subscribe, as this took over 15 hours to make. I have a crazy idea for episode 2, but you'll only find out if this video gets 10 likes. Thank you so much for watching, and have a good day. Also, there's your outro ID.